Welcome to this lecture session related to the Hawthorne Studies. In this lecture session, we will discuss the four phases of Hawthorne Studies. What were the implications or the findings of these studies and reasons for which these studies are often criticized. So, for easy and simple lecture sessions, do like, share, and subscribe my channel. Hawthorne studies were conducted in four phases to study the relationship between the productivity and the physical working conditions. The first phase covered the experiments to determine the effect of change in illumination or light on productivity. These experiments were conducted from 1924 to 27. The second phase determined the change in working hours and other working conditions on productivity. This phase conducted the experiments from 1927 to 28. Then, in the third phase, interviews were conducted to determine the attitude and sentiment of workers. And this phase was carried between 1928 to 1930. The last phase of Hawthorne studies was carried between 1931 to 1932, basically to analyze the functioning of small groups and its impact on individual behavior. So, the Hawthorne studies were conducted through these four phases, and we will be discussing each phase in detail in this lecture session. The first phase is the illumination experiment. The main objective of this experiment was to test the effect of physical environment on productivity. The physical factor taken for experiment was light. And during the study, the employees of General Electric were divided into two groups, the experimental group and the control group. It was assumed that the higher light facility will lead to more production. The light was varied in the experimental group. This experiment concluded that there is no major effect of light on productivity. Elton Mayo concluded that physical factor does not impact the production. But in modern times, this phase of Hawthorne studies has been disproved by many researchers. So this was the first phase of Hawthorne studies. The second phase of Hawthorne studies is the relay assembly test room experiments. The main objective was to determine the effect of change in various job conditions on group productivity. And for this experiment, first two girls were selected, and then they were told to choose four more girls as their co workers. The work was related to the assembly of various parts into finished goods. During the production process, certain changes were introduced. A supervisor was assigned to overlook the work. Sometimes the girls were consulted to introduce any change, and they were also allowed to take their own decisions. The incentive system was also introduced. And during the production process, when the rests were increased to 10 minutes, the productivity increased. The rests were given both in morning and evening sessions. But when the rest period was decreased to 5 minutes and frequency was increased, the productivity fell as the system of work was affected. The girls also complained regarding this issue. Again, the number of rests were increased to 2 of 10 minutes each. Coffee and snacks were also given. The productivity increased again. Then the changes were introduced in working hours, and Saturday was given off. As a result, the productivity increased. After some time, the researchers reverted back to the original position with no rest and other benefits. And surprisingly, the productivity didn't decrease. The researchers concluded that productivity is influenced by a change in girls' attitude towards their work. As with freedom of work, sense of responsibility, self discipline, the productivity increased. The relationship between the workers and the supervisor was also important for more productivity. So, this was the second phase of Hawthorne studies. In the third phase of Hawthorne studies, nearly 20,000 employees were interviewed to determine the employees' attitude towards the company, supervisor, insurance plans, promotion, and wages. During this process, insights about human behavior were also studied. Initially, the questions were asked by using the direct method. The respondents had to answer as yes or no. Later on, indirect method was also used to interview to get more details. The results of this mass interview program indicated that the behavior of the employee is influenced by the personal and social experiences. The social group have an influence upon workers' behavior. To reach more specified conclusion, Mayo wanted to conduct more detailed research on human behavior. And during the course of these experiments, the workers were also counseled for good human relations. The fourth experiment is known as the banking wiring observation room experiments. A group of 14 male workers was formed. These workers were working in a telephone exchange. The hourly wage rate for personnel was based on the average output of each worker, while the bonus to be paid to workers was based on the average of group output. It was assumed that in order to earn more, the workers would produce more. However, the assumptions proved wrong. The workers restricted their output. The main reason behind this restricted output was the fear of unemployment, protection of slow workers, and fear of raising the production standards. The study suggested that informal relationship is also important factor in determining the human behavior. So during the course of these experiments, the workers were counseled for good human relations. The supervisors were also required to understand and accept the problems faced by the workers. We can conclude that the Hawthorne experiments suggested the importance of good human relations in a business organization. We can say that Hawthorne studies try to find out various factors which are necessary to motivate the employees. And these are the major findings or the implications of Hawthorne studies. The study indicated that organization is influenced by certain social factors, and these social factors also play an important role in production process. Apart from economic rewards, the social factors should be taken into account while motivating the employees. Then studies also highlighted that there is strong influence of social groups on organizational functioning. The individual behavior of employees is also influenced by group behavior. These groups, however, also create a conflict among various social groups that exist in an organization. As per the Hawthorne studies, leadership also plays an important role in group behavior. The supervisor plays an important role in improving the efficiency and output of the group or the organization. The informal relation among the workers influence the workers' behavior and performance more than the formal relationship. The employees perform better when they are given more freedom to express their views, and they are treated with more respect and dignity. And they also participate in decision making more actively in this case. And overall, their performance also improves. Then, apart from financial incentives, social and psychological needs must be satisfied in order to increase production. At last, the Hawthorne studies also indicated that communication is also an important aspect of organization. The communication creates better relations between the management and the workers. So these were the main findings of the Hawthorne studies, which were conducted in four different phases. So before ending this lecture session, let's also discuss the reasons why the Hawthorne studies were criticized. The Hawthorne studies were conducted under controlled situations. The results might differ in real settings. The workers knew about these experiments. The studies were also criticized mainly because the role of union is ignored in these experiments. The Hawthorne studies gave more importance to human aspects, like some other important factors like technology was ignored while conducting these experiments. Then in these experiments, too much emphasis were laid on group decision making, but it is shown that when quick decisions are to be taken, then individual decision making is the best. The Hawthorne studies also gives too much freedom to workers. In reality, too much freedom can lead to low production. So, these were the main reasons for which the Hawthorne studies were criticized. Thank you.